There comes a moment when you realize you can't keep living like this, constantly drained, constantly affected by things that shouldn't have this much power over you. Maybe you've spent years feeling like you have no control over your own emotions. Like every little thing, what someone says, what someone does, what doesn't go your way, dictates how you feel. Maybe you've been walking through life carrying invisible weights, things that were never even yours to hold. You wake up already tense, already anticipating stress. You replay old conversations, dwell on things you can't change, and feel yourself being pulled into the same cycles. Overthinking, overcaring, overreacting. And more times than you should be, spiraling out of control. Sometimes it's just a feeling that won't quite go away, an undercurrent of anxiety that neither takes full hold or fully disappears, but just lingers around enough to hold you hostage. Other times, it's so bad, all you want to do is run away. You just want to run. You literally think you're going crazy, that no normal person lets things affect them so easily, or so much. Even though it's hard to admit, you constantly find yourself being emotionally and mentally unstable, and you continue in this loop that just won't let up. You think you're all good again, and you're on a high, and the next moment you feel like your world is crashing down around you. And deep down, you know it's not just about other people. It's not just about who hurt you, who let you down, who didn't appreciate you. It's about you. It's about the way you've let everything and everyone have access to your peace, to your mind, to your emotions. It's about how hard you are on yourself. The cost of this emotional roller coaster is immense. It affects your relationships, as people never know which version of you they'll encounter. It impacts your work, as your concentration fragments under the weight of internal chaos. It erodes your self-trust, as you question whether you can rely on yourself to remain stable. Most devastatingly, it robs you of presence, the ability to fully experience your life as it unfolds, rather than being trapped in mental projections of what might happen or ruminating on what already has. You've tried different approaches. Perhaps you've attempted to suppress your emotions, only to have them burst forth later with even greater intensity. Maybe you've sought validation from others, hoping their reassurance would quiet the storm inside. Or you've tried to control every situation, believing that if you could just predict and manage every outcome, you'd finally feel at peace. But these strategies have failed you time and time again, because they address symptoms rather than the root cause. What you haven't yet realized is that this hyperreactivity isn't just a character flaw or some unchangeable aspect of your personality. It's a learned pattern, a habit of mind that is strengthened over time through repetition. And like any habit, it can be unlearned and replaced with healthier options. The reactive mind isn't who you are. It's simply what you've practiced becoming. But here's the truth. You don't have to live this way. You can change. This journey won't always be easy. Growth isn't linear. It's a series of expansions and contractions, breakthroughs and setbacks. But with consistent practice and the tools provided in these pages, you'll develop a steadiness that remains unshaken, even when circumstances are chaotic. This book is not about becoming emotionless. It's about learning to control what you give your energy to. It's about understanding that not everything deserves a reaction. Not everyone deserves access to you. And not every thought is worth believing. It's about setting boundaries and protecting your peace without guilt. This book will teach you how to stop letting little things ruin your entire day. Stop self-sabotaging. Set healthy boundaries without feeling guilty. Recognize the difference between real guilt and manipulation. Break the cycle of overthinking before it spirals out of control. Stop taking everything so personally and free yourself from emotional reactivity. Identify toxic patterns in relationships and walk away without regret. Be more in control and feel better every day. Shift your mindset from victimhood to self-empowerment. learn the art of emotional detachment, how to be unbothered without becoming cold, and move forward unapologetically without feeling the need to explain your growth. Remember, you are not weak for feeling things deeply or overthinking, but you do have to stop letting those consume you. You are not selfish for choosing yourself, but you do have to stop apologizing for it. You are not heartless for walking away from what no longer serves you, but you do have to stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand. This is your turning point. Let's begin uncovering why everything affects you so deeply, and then how to finally break free. Part 1. Why you let everything affect you. Chapter 1. The root of the problem. Why you feel everything so deeply. Have you ever wondered why certain things seem to affect you more than they do other people? Why a simple comment, a certain look, or even the tone in someone's voice can sit with you for hours, sometimes even days? Why your emotions can feel so strong that they completely take over, leaving you exhausted, overthinking, and overwhelmed? If so, you're not alone. Some people are just wired to feel things more deeply. It's not a weakness, and it's not something that makes you too sensitive. It's simply the way you experience the world. But when emotions feel like they have too much control over your life, it can start to feel like a curse. For deeply feeling people, life isn't just something they go through. It's something they absorb. Every conversation, every interaction, every little moment is felt on a deeper level. This can be beautiful because it allows you to connect with people in meaningful ways, appreciate the small things, and experience emotions in a way that others may never fully understand. But it can also be exhausting. When you feel everything so deeply, the hard moments aren't just hard, they're all consuming. A simple misunderstanding can feel like rejection. A small mistake can turn into a spiral of self-doubt. A passing comment from someone can stick with you for long after they've forgotten they even said it. The reason some people feel more intensely than others comes down to a mix of genetics, personality, and life experiences. Some people are naturally more in tune with emotions. They pick up on small details that others might miss. They notice shifts in tone or body language, and they process things in a way that makes experiences feel much bigger. Research on highly sensitive people, HSPs, by Dr. Elaine Aron, 1997, suggests that about 20% of the population is born with a more reactive nervous system. This means their brains process sensory input and emotional cues more deeply than others. On top of that, childhood experiences play a big role. If you grew up in an environment where emotions weren't validated, you might have learned to overanalyze them as a way of making sense of things. If you grew up in a place where you had to be extra aware of people's moods, you may have developed a heightened sensitivity to everything around you. The problem isn't just that you feel deeply, it's that you don't know how to turn it off. You don't just experience your own emotions strongly, you also absorb the emotions of others. You walk into a room and instantly sense the energy. If someone is upset, you feel it. If someone is acting differently, you notice. It's like carrying an emotional radar that's always on, always picking up signals, always processing. While this can make you empathetic and understanding, it can also leave you drained because you're carrying the weight of emotions that aren't even yours. The problem with being empathetic is that you even feel sorry for the people who hurt you. This level of sensitivity also leads to overthinking everything. Your brain constantly replays conversations, searching for hidden meanings. You second-guess things you said, worried that you might have come across the wrong way. You assume that if someone is being quiet, it must have something to do with you. This overanalysis doesn't just keep your mind busy, it keeps you stuck. You get lost in cycles of self-doubt, worrying about things that don't actually matter as much as they feel like they do. One of the biggest struggles for deeply feeling people is the sense of guilt that comes with it. You feel guilty for caring too much. You feel guilty for taking things too personally. You feel guilty for not being able to just let things go, like everyone tells you to. And because you feel emotions so strongly, you might also feel responsible for how other people feel. You overextend yourself, you put others first, and you do everything you can to keep the peace, even when it comes at the expense of your own well-being. The exhaustion that comes from feeling everything deeply isn't just mental, it's physical too. When your emotions are constantly heightened, your nervous system is always on high alert. Your body carries stress in ways you don't even realize. This is why some people who feel deeply also struggle with anxiety, tension, headaches, or even exhaustion from simply being around people. Your body isn't just reacting to your own emotions. It's reacting to the emotional weight of everything and everyone around you. But feeling everything so deeply doesn't just leave you emotionally exhausted. It can also make you care too much, stretching yourself thin in ways you don't even realize. The emotional cost of caring too much. Caring is supposed to be a good thing. It's what makes us human. It helps us connect, love, and build meaningful relationships. But what happens when caring becomes something that drains you instead of fulfilling you? When it starts to feel like an emotional weight you can't put down? When you care so much about everything, what people think, how they feel, what they need, that it leaves you feeling empty, exhausted, and unappreciated? For those who care deeply, life often feels like a never-ending emotional investment. You put your heart into everything, your relationships, your friendships, even the smallest interactions with strangers. You give your time, your energy, and your emotions without hesitation. And yet, instead of feeling fulfilled, you often feel worn out, taken for granted, or even resentful. It's not that you don't want to care, it's that you don't know how to stop, even when it's hurting you. Caring too much comes at a cost, and that cost is often your own emotional well-being. When you constantly put others first, there's little room left for yourself. Your own needs, feelings, and desires get pushed to the background. You tell yourself it's okay, that making others happy is worth it, but deep down, it's draining you. Over time, this imbalance leaves you feeling emotionally depleted, like you're constantly giving but never receiving. One of the biggest struggles of caring too much is the weight of emotional responsibility. You feel responsible for making sure people are okay. You feel guilty if you can't fix their problems. You take on their emotions as if they're your own. And when they're struggling, it feels like your job to make it better. But the truth is, you can't save everyone. You can't carry the emotional burdens of the people around you and expect to stay emotionally intact yourself. No matter how much you care, other people's happiness is not your responsibility. And when you believe it is, you set yourself up for exhaustion and disappointment. I used to think I could save everyone until I realized they were drowning me. Another hidden cost of caring too much is how easily it can lead to overextending yourself. You say yes when you want to say no. You show up for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You push yourself beyond your limits because you don't want to let anyone down. But what happens when you keep pouring from an empty cup? You end up mentally drained, emotionally fragile, and sometimes even physically exhausted. And the worst part? Sometimes the people you bend over backward for don't even notice the sacrifices you're making. Caring too much can also make you vulnerable to being taken advantage of. When people see that you'll always show up, always say yes, always care, some will start to expect it, not appreciate it. They'll assume you'll always be there, no matter how they treat you. And because you care so much, you'll tolerate things you shouldn't. You'll excuse behavior that hurts you. You'll stay in one-sided relationships, friendships, and situations that leave you feeling unseen and unvalued. But here's the hard truth. Caring about people doesn't mean they'll care about you in the same way. And that realization is painful. It's what leads to quiet resentment, burnout, and emotional exhaustion. It's what makes you feel drained by the very relationships you once cherished. When you care too much without limits, you end up carrying the emotional weight of everyone else while struggling to hold yourself together. Chapter 2. The problem isn't just people. It's everything. How you let life overwhelm you. I remember a particular day when everything felt like too much. It wasn't anything catastrophic, just an ordinary morning that unraveled into something heavier than I could handle. I woke up feeling exhausted even though I'd slept. My phone was the first thing I saw, notifications stacked on top of each other, reminders of things I hadn't done, messages I didn't have the energy to answer. I told myself I'd get to them later, but the guilt was already there, weighing me down before I even got out of bed. I rushed through my morning, already running behind. Then, I spilled my coffee. Not a big deal, right? But in that moment, it felt like the final straw. Like the universe was proving that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't even get the simple things right. I had to change my clothes, which made me even later, which made me even more anxious. By the time I got into my car, I was gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. Every red light felt personal. Every slow driver felt like they were intentionally in my way. My mind spiraled. I should have left earlier. I should be more organized. Why can't I just get my life together? By the time I made it to my meeting, I wasn't just stressed. I was completely drained. I walked in, plastered on a neutral expression, and pretended everything was fine. But inside, I felt like I was drowning in things I couldn't even name. That's the thing about overwhelm. It doesn't hit all at once. It creeps up on you, disguised as small, insignificant moments. It's the weight of expectations, your own, other people's, society's, all pressing down until you feel like you can't breathe. You tell yourself you should be able to handle it. Other people seem to manage just fine. So why does life always feel like too much? The truth is, it's not just one thing. It's everything. Your day isn't made up of big crises, but of dozens of small moments that each demand something from you. Each notification, each task, each interaction requires energy. And when your resources are already depleted, even the smallest request can feel monumental. Think about it. Have you ever had a day where something went wrong, but it didn't really bother you? Maybe you laughed it off and moved on. And then other days, something just as small sets you off completely. The difference isn't the situation itself. It's your mental state when it happens. If you don't process your emotions as they come, they don't just disappear. They pile up in the background. When you don't have an outlet for them, they look for any excuse to surface. That's why you might end up crying over something as trivial as dropping your phone. Because it's not just about the phone. It's about everything else you've been holding in. Psychologist John Sweller's cognitive load theory, 1998, explains why even small stresses can feel unbearable when your brain is already overloaded. Your brain has a limited capacity for processing information at any given moment. When too much stress or decision-making is competing for mental space, your brain struggles to function efficiently. Imagine your mind like your bedroom. When your room is messy, clothes scattered everywhere, piles of laundry, random objects covering every surface, it feels overwhelming. You might put up with it for days, some people even weeks. You notice it. You acknowledge that it's slightly bothering you, but you let it go. And then one day, walking into that same room makes you tense because it's chaotic. And finding what you need takes extra effort. You're not just dealing with the task at hand. Your brain is now also subconsciously processing all the visual clutter. Now, think about how it feels when your room is clean. Everything in its place. Open space. Nothing extra demanding your attention. Suddenly, the room feels bigger, You can breathe easier, relax more, and focus better. Your brain works the same way. When your mental space is cluttered with stress, decisions, and unfinished thoughts, even the smallest inconvenience feels overwhelming. Not because it's a big deal, but because your brain is already at capacity. And when our brain is at capacity, it often causes emotional reactions that are connected to deeper wounds. Our outward reactions may seem disproportionate because they're not just about the present moment. They're about every similar experience we've ever had. Getting cut off in traffic might not seem like a big deal, but in that moment, it can feel like proof that people are selfish and inconsiderate. Someone not replying to your text right away might feel like rejection, even though it's probably not. These reactions aren't always logical, but they're being driven by underlying beliefs and emotional wounds that haven't fully healed. What can make gaining control over our mind and life even harder is the world we live in today. We're constantly bombarded with information, comparisons, and pressure to keep up. Social media shows us people who seem to be doing more, achieving more, living better. Work expects us to be available at all times. Society convinces us that if we're not constantly improving, we're failing. It's no wonder so many of us feel like we're on the verge of burnout. The problem isn't just that people drain you or that your thoughts overwhelm you. It's that life itself has become an endless series of inputs, expectations, and demands that few of us were ever taught how to manage. And when our minds are overwhelmed by this constant input overload, they don't simply shut down. They go into overdrive. This is where the real prison begins to form. In how our minds process, ruminate on, and amplify these pressures until they consume us. Chapter 3. The Thought Prison. How your mind creates mental loops. Often, your mind plays tricks on you. And it's because of these tricks that we get caught up in overthinking. This is where it gets interesting. Subconsciously, it tries to convince you that if you think about something long enough, you'll somehow gain control over it. At first, you might convince yourself it's helping, that by analyzing every detail, you're preventing mistakes or protecting yourself from pain. But what you don't realize is that overthinking isn't protecting you. It's trapping you in a cycle psychologists call the anxiety loop. This loop begins when your brain fixates on a worry, feeds it with more stress, and then convinces you that you must keep thinking about it to solve it. But the more you engage, the worse it gets. It's like quicksand. The harder you struggle, the deeper you sink. The worst part? Most of the things you're anxious about never even happen. I'm sure you're all too familiar with how your mind replays conversations, analyzes what you should have said, and imagines worst-case scenarios that never even happened. You lose sleep over scenarios that never play out. You rehearse arguments that never take place. You brace yourself for disappointment that never comes. And even if something does go wrong, it's rarely as bad as your mind's made it out to be. Yet your brain keeps running the same cycle again and again. Consider what happens when someone doesn't text you back right away. Your brain doesn't think, oh, they're probably busy. Instead, it jumps to, did I say something wrong? Are they mad at me? Are they losing interest? If a friend seems distant, instead of assuming they might be having a bad day, your mind immediately goes to, they must be upset with me. Did I do something? What if they don't want me in their life anymore? Your brain doesn't like uncertainty, so it creates a narrative, one that usually leans towards negativity. These aren't occasional thoughts. They become core beliefs that shape how you see yourself and the world. Your brain is wired to focus on threats, a survival mechanism that once protected our ancestors from danger. Psychologists often refer to this as the negativity bias. Your brain naturally fixates on negative experiences more than positive ones, even when there's no real threat. Research by Baumeister and colleagues, 2001, demonstrated that negative events have a greater impact on our psychological state than positive ones of equal intensity. This hypervigilance kept our ancestors alive. But in modern life, your brain isn't warning you about actual danger. It's warning you about embarrassment, rejection, failure, and uncertainty. Your brain craves certainty. It wants answers. It wants to predict outcomes. It wants to prepare for every possible worst-case scenario, because in some twisted way, it believes that if it worries enough, it can prevent bad things from happening or find the right decision to make. This is an illusion. Worrying doesn't prevent anything and rarely decides the right decision. It just steals your peace in the present moment. Research on decision fatigue by Baumeister and colleagues, 1998, revealed that the more mental energy you spend on unnecessary worries, the less capable you are of making clear, rational decisions. Anxiety drains your ability to focus, leaving you mentally exhausted but no closer to a solution. Why your mind clings to pain. Overthinking isn't just about survival. It's also about emotional pain. At some point, you learn that pain demands attention. Maybe it was a past mistake that still haunts you, or a relationship that left you broken. Maybe you grew up in an environment where you constantly had to be on edge, preparing for the next disappointment. Whatever the reason, your brain got used to holding on to pain instead of letting it go. Here's the hard truth. Pain can become familiar. So familiar that you don't even realize you're clinging to it. When you've been hurt, your brain wants to keep replaying it, as if going over it enough times will change what happened. But instead of finding closure, you just keep reopening the wound. It's like scratching at a cut instead of letting it heal. This is why some people unconsciously seek out situations that reinforce their pain. They chase after unavailable people, stay in toxic cycles, or put themselves in positions where they'll be disappointed. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because it's what they know. If your mind has been conditioned to expect pain, then peace can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Without even realizing it, you keep going back to what hurts you, simply because it feels normal. And it's usually overthinking that disguises these habits. For example, when something feels peaceful in our life, our brain will go into overdrive of what could potentially go wrong. And if we don't know how to handle that situation when it arises and allow it to take root, it can subconsciously cause us to self-sabotage. Then, back we go into the chaos. Psychologist Susan Nolan Heichsamer, 2000, conducted groundbreaking research on rumination, the act of continuously thinking about distressing experiences. Her studies found that rumination actually feeds into anxiety and depression rather than resolving them. The more you replay past pain, the harder it becomes to break free from it. Instead of helping you process emotions, overthinking deepens your emotional suffering, making it even more difficult to move on. Realizing you grew up too young, fell in love too young, dealt with the hardest battles too young, and now you're an overstimulated adult who has been in fight or flight mode most of their life and trying to be the best version of yourself. Your thoughts don't just influence how you feel. They shape your entire reality. The stories your mind tells becomes the lens through which you see everything. And because these stories come from inside your own head, you assume they must be true. You don't even question them. But here's the fundamental truth you need to understand. Your thoughts are not reality. Your brain is not a perfect machine that only delivers facts. It is shaped by your fears, insecurities, and past experiences. It jumps to conclusions. It fills in gaps. It creates problems that don't exist. When something feels unclear or unknown, Your brain tries to fill in the gaps, and often it does this by assuming the worst. This doesn't mean it's reality. Most times, you're seeing things worse than they actually are, not how they really are. In the grand scheme of things, most of the things we overreact about aren't that serious. They definitely aren't serious enough to justify a meltdown or going into fight or flight mode. These mental narratives become automatic over time. You don't even realize you're telling yourself the same things every day. It just feels like reality. But these stories are just perspectives you've accepted, not facts. If you believe you're not enough, you'll replay moments where you felt overlooked while ignoring times you were valued. If you believe people always leave, you'll focus on every time someone walked away while ignoring the people who stayed. Your brain isn't looking for the truth. It's looking for proof of the stories you've already decided to believe. Why these patterns persist. There are several reasons why these mental loops persist. 1. Your brain rewards overthinking even when it doesn't help you. Every time you engage with anxious thoughts, you reinforce neural pathways that make those thoughts more accessible in the future. Your brain essentially becomes more efficient at producing the thoughts you engage with most frequently. 2. Your brain prefers familiarity. Even if a belief is painful, it's comfortable because it's what you know. Changing it feels uncomfortable because it challenges the version of reality you've held onto for so long. This is called cognitive consistency, the tendency to maintain beliefs even when evidence contradicts them. 3. You've never actively challenged these thoughts. You've accepted them as part of who you are, rather than questioning their validity. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most evidence-based approaches to treating anxiety, focuses specifically on identifying and challenging these automatic thoughts. 4. Letting go feels irresponsible. Your brain convinces you that if you stop thinking about something, you're being careless. But letting go doesn't mean ignoring your problems. It means accepting what you can't control. Research on mindfulness shows that observing thoughts without attaching to them actually leads to better problem solving. The more you dwell on negative thoughts, the deeper they become ingrained in your mind, making it harder to break the cycle. Nolan Heikseimer's research demonstrated that people who ruminate recover more slowly from depression and are more likely to develop it in the first place. One single thought can snowball into a full-blown crisis, all because your brain assumes that every thought it produces must be taken seriously. Maybe you make a small mistake at work, and before you know it, your thoughts have convinced you that you're terrible at your job and that failure is inevitable. Maybe you wake up feeling a little anxious, and instead of letting those feelings pass, your brain latches onto it. What if something is seriously wrong with me? What if I feel like this forever? Over time, you don't just think about pain, you start identifying with it. You mistake your thoughts for reality, your fears for truth. But your thoughts are not you, and they are not necessarily true. They are just thoughts. And the moment you stop treating them as absolute truth, you give yourself the freedom to finally let go. Understanding these patterns is the first step towards recognizing their power over you. When you see your thoughts are creating these loops, not external reality, you begin to realize how much influence they have. The prison exists only in your mind. This is where stepping back becomes not just helpful, but essential. When we're caught in these mental loops, we're seeing everything through a keyhole, a narrow, distorted view that magnifies our problems and minimizes our resilience. To break free, we need to widen our perspective dramatically, not just beyond our immediate thoughts, but beyond our human-sized concerns altogether. Chapter 4. The Bigger Perspective. Imagine stepping outside of your own mind for a moment. Picture an observer from another planet, watching Earth from a distance. They're looking at the mountains, the oceans, the vibrant ecosystems teeming with life. They see people waking up every day, surrounded by endless opportunities to experience, to love, to create, to simply exist in this miraculous reality. And they know they are only given one life to experience it. Then, they look around at their own planet, and it's lifeless. Nothing but a ball of dust. No life, like an empty vessel. When I think about this scenario, it makes me truly wonder what someone else would think of us looking down. From this cosmic viewpoint, it's almost laughable, but it's not. It's just sad. The universe, vast and indifferent, stretches endlessly in every direction. And here we are, on this tiny, breathtakingly beautiful planet, obsessing over whether someone liked our social media post, whether we said something embarrassing at dinner last night, or whether we're measuring up to societal expectations. We are literally wasting our life stressing on the most beautiful planet that we know of. Think about it. Every time we are stressing, we are wasting precious time. And for what? We live as if we have infinite time, as if we can afford to waste days, weeks, or even years trapped in mental loops of worry and fear. How many family gatherings, how many events or experiences have been tarnished by being affected by someone else's actions toward you? How many times have you been somewhere but your mind has been somewhere else? Spending time with loved ones, but not being truly present. So many previous memories and moments wasted. And for what? Caring or worrying over what? The truth is, our time here is limited. We are all going to die. One day you won't be here to do any of the things you love. In fact, you won't even have to wait until death. At a certain age, if some of us get there, you physically won't be able to do them. You will be too old and physically unable to walk around freely on your own, let alone jump in the ocean, meet new people, or explore this beautiful world. A lot of the people who you love today will be gone. And what will you look back and say? It was good that I stressed for 2 months about that person who didn't text me back. I promise you will look back with regret. It's not about dismissing the issues we face, but about putting into perspective the magnitude we give them. This year, instead of worrying about what's under the tree, maybe just be grateful for who's still here to be around it. Stepping back and seeing life from a higher perspective allows us to regain clarity. Think of it like looking at your hand. When it's pressed against the tip of your nose, you can't see it clearly. Now move it away and look. It's the same with our problems and with life. Sometimes we cannot solve the problem by constantly thinking about it. We need distance. We need space to see the whole picture. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, try to zoom out. Ask yourself, will this matter or have this much power in 3 months, 6 months, or a year from now? And be honest with yourself about the answer. More often than not, the answer is no. Sometimes it might not matter in a couple of weeks. A big part of the reason we worry and stress is because we don't see the whole picture. Some of us also love the concept of thinking we are always in control. Consider the profound story of Job in the Bible, one of history's most powerful examples of human suffering and meaning. Whether you're religious or not, Job's story reflects our shared humanity during times of suffering and powerlessness. At its core, it teaches us about letting go and accepting that we can't always understand why things happen the way they do, when they do. Here was a man who lost everything: his children, his wealth, his health, everything he'd built and everyone he loved. In the midst of this unimaginable suffering, Job cries out for answers. He demands to know why he, a man who he believes has a good heart, should suffer so terribly. And what's fascinating about this ancient story is God's response. When God finally speaks, he doesn't actually answer Job's individual questions directly. He doesn't explain why the suffering happened or offer comfort in the way Job expects in that moment. Instead, God responds with questions of his own. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. God takes Job on a cosmic tour, showing him the vast complexity of creation. From the patterns of stars to the rebirth of mountain goats. The message is clear and humbling. Job's perspective is painfully limited. From his human vantage point, suffering seems senseless and cruel. But there's a larger pattern at work that he cannot possibly comprehend. This also seconds one of Job's friends' advice. Unlike three of his other friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, who argue that Job's suffering must be due to his sins, Elihu argues that the reason for suffering can also be for spiritual growth and purification. This isn't to dismiss the intensity of suffering at times. Rather, it's a powerful reminder of how limiting our view can be. We see only a tiny fragment of the pattern, a few threads in an immense tapestry. That's why we have to learn to let go and trust that there may be purpose and meaning, even in experiences that seem senseless from our perspective. And we know this is possible because of those moments in our own lives when what initially seemed like disaster later revealed itself as necessary transformation. Those moments we never thought we'd get out of, that later proved to be the very experiences that shaped us into who we needed to become. When you're caught in stress or anxiety, pause. Take a breath. Remember that your perspective is limited right now. The thing that's consuming your thoughts is probably not as significant as it feels. And even if it is challenging, remember how much else is in the vast universe that's working perfectly, beautifully, exactly as it should. With this broader perspective in mind, you're now ready to explore practical techniques that can help you break free from the mental and emotional patterns that keep you trapped. These aren't just temporary fixes. They're transformative practices that will gradually change how you relate to your thoughts, emotions, and the world around you. Part 1. Solutions. The witness practice. Transforming your relationship with emotions. At the heart of emotional freedom lies a simple but profound shift. Learning to witness your emotions rather than becoming them. When you're caught in intense feelings, you lose perspective. You are no longer you. You are the anger, the anxiety, the hurt. This complete identification with emotions is what makes them so overwhelming. The witness practice breaks this pattern through 3 connected steps. First, name what you're experiencing specifically. This isn't just a mental exercise. It's neurological alchemy. When you label an emotion precisely, I'm feeling disappointed, rather than I feel bad, you activate your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain that can modulate emotional intensity. Brain imaging studies show that this simple act of naming reduces activity in the amygdala, your emotional alarm system. Next, create linguistic distance. Instead of saying, I am angry, try, I notice anger arising in me right now. This subtle shift positions you as the observer of your emotions, rather than being identical to them. You're acknowledging the emotion without letting it define you completely. This isn't denying how you feel. It's recognizing that you are larger than any feeling passing through you. Finally, bring awareness to the physical sensations. Where do you feel this emotion in your body? Is there tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, heat in your face? By anchoring your attention in physical sensations, You pull yourself out of the mental stories that intensify emotions and ground yourself in direct experience. This embodied awareness turns abstract emotional suffering into manageable physical experience. Practice this sequence daily, especially with smaller emotions, so it becomes second nature when stronger feelings arise. The more you practice witnessing your emotions rather than becoming them, the more space you create, and in that space lies your freedom. The attention restoration system, creating mental space. The modern world wasn't designed for the sensitive nervous system. Every notification, conversation, and decision requires mental energy. And for deeply feeling people, this cognitive load can quickly become overwhelming. The key to sanity isn't just better time management, it's deliberate attention restoration. Creating attention sanctuaries is essential for mental recovery. These are physical or temporal spaces completely free from demands on your attention. Unlike quick breaks that often involve different forms of stimulation, like checking social media, true attention sanctuaries allow your directed attention system, the neural network responsible for focus and emotional regulation, to genuinely reset. Design your attention sanctuary with these elements. Sensory simplicity. Choose an environment with minimal sensory input, a quiet corner, a peaceful outdoor space, or even a bathroom with the door locked if options are limited. Reduce visual clutter, noise, and other stimulation. Technology absence. Keep your sanctuary completely device-free. No phones, computers, tablets, or watches that connect you to the digital world. This isn't just about avoiding distractions. It's about giving your brain a complete break from the cognitive load of connectivity. Natural elements. Research shows that natural environments are particularly effective for attention restoration. Even small doses of nature, a view of trees, the sound of water, or holding a plant, can facilitate recovery. Temporal boundaries. Decide in advance how long you'll spend in your sanctuary. Even 5 minutes can be restorative if it's complete. Set a timer outside your sanctuary so you're not checking your time. Schedule these attention restoration periods proactively throughout your day, ideally before you feel overwhelmed, not after. Even brief periods of complete attentional rest can prevent the cognitive depletion that leads to emotional reactivity and mental exhaustion. This isn't indulgence. It's necessary maintenance for your most precious resource, your capacity for focused attention and emotional regulation. Research consistently shows that these brief restoration periods actually increase productivity and creativity while reducing stress hormones and reactive behavior. The thought containment practice, breaking free from rumination. The thought containment practice works by giving your brain what it's actually seeking when it ruminates, a sense of control and completion. Instead of trying to stop thoughts, which paradoxically makes them stronger, you're creating a structured container for them. Here's how to implement it. First, designate a specific worry time each day. 15 to 20 minutes when you'll deliberately engage with your concerns. Choose a time when you typically have mental energy, not right before bed. When intrusive thoughts arise outside this time, acknowledge them briefly with, "I see you, and I'll give you my full attention during worry time." Then write the thought in a dedicated notebook or digital note. This physical act of recording satisfies your brain's need to hold on to the concern without letting it consume your current moment. During your designated worry time, review what you've written and give each concern your full attention. For each worry, ask yourself, is there an action I can take about this now? If yes, what's the smallest first step? If no, can I accept this uncertainty for now? After worry time ends, close your notebook or file, signaling to your brain that this session is complete. If the same thoughts return before your next worry time, remind yourself, I've already captured this. I'll think about it during worry time. This practice works because it honors your brain's need to process concerns while preventing them from infiltrating every moment of your day. Over time, your mind learns that these thoughts will get attention, just not immediately. This breaks the habit of instant rumination while still addressing legitimate concerns. The key is consistency. At first, your brain will resist this structured approach, pushing you to engage with thoughts immediately. With practice, you'll find that urgent feeling thoughts can usually wait, and many concerns that seem pressing lose their intensity when deliberately examined during worry time. For long-standing thought patterns that are deeply ingrained, pair this practice with a counter-narrative journal. Each day, write evidence that contradicts your negative belief, gradually building a case for a new perspective. What we focus on expands. By deliberately attending to evidence that challenges negative thought patterns, you begin rewriting the neural pathways that maintain them. Mental strength conditioning, breaking free from thought loops. Research from Stanford University's neuroscience department has revealed something fascinating. The more you try to directly suppress unwanted thoughts, the more persistent they become. Wegner, 2012. It's like telling yourself, don't think about a white bear. Suddenly, white bears are everywhere in your mind. This ironic processing effect explains why traditional approaches like just think positive or stop overthinking actually backfire. So how do you break free from these mental loops? The science points to two particularly effective approaches that work directly with your brain's architecture rather than against it. The thought diffusion exercise. When you're caught in a thought loop, try this technique that's been validated through multiple clinical studies at Harvard's psychological department. 1. Notice when you're stuck in a repetitive thought. 2. Say to yourself, I am noticing that I'm having the thought that, followed by the specific thought. 3. Then visualize the thought as text scrolling across a screen or written on leaves floating down a stream. 4. Observe the thought passing by without engaging with its content. This creates psychological distance between you and your thoughts. Research by Masuda and colleagues, 2010, demonstrated that this simple practice reduced both the emotional impact and believability of negative thoughts by over 40% compared to control groups who tried to suppress or argue with their thoughts. The pattern interrupt plus pivot. Breaking thought loops requires both interrupting the current pattern and redirecting neural activity. Dr. Jeffrey Swartz at UCLA School of Medicine developed this 4-step approach that's proven effective even for severe thought patterns in OCD. 1. Relabel. Identify the thought loop by name. This is rumination, or this is catastrophizing. 2. Reattribute. Remind yourself, this is my brain getting stuck, not an accurate reflection of reality. 3. Refocus. Immediately engage in a pre-selected absorbing activity that requires full attention. Solving a math problem, naming everything blue in your environment, counting backward from 100 by sevens, etc. 4. Revalue. Afterward, briefly reflect. That thought pattern isn't helpful or necessary. Schwartz's research, published in the Archives of General Psychiatry, showed this technique actually changes brain activity patterns in the quadrant nucleus, a key area involved in thought loops, when practiced consistently. The key to both techniques is consistency. Like building any skill, breaking entrenched thought patterns takes practice. But neuroscience confirms that with repetition, these new responses become your brain's default setting. The thoughts may still arise. That's just your brain doing its job. But they no longer trap you in endless loops of rumination. The integration. Daily practice for lasting change. These practices aren't separate techniques to try occasionally. They form an integrated system that, when practiced consistently, creates profound transformation over time. The key is implementation. Knowing what to do isn't the same as doing it regularly enough to create change. To integrate these practices into your daily life, create implementation intentions, specific plans for when and where you'll practice each technique. Research shows that these concrete plans make you far more likely to follow through than general intentions. Morning. Begin with a brief witness practice. As you notice your first emotional responses of the day, practice naming, distancing, and embodying them. This sets the tone for conscious emotional awareness throughout the day. Throughout the day, when emotions arise intensely, implement the witness practice. When intrusive thoughts become spiraling, use the thought containment approach to record them for later consideration. Midday. Schedule a 5 to 10 minute attention restoration period, completely disconnecting from demands and allowing your directed attention system to reset. Even this brief period can significantly reduce afternoon reactivity. Evening. Review your thought container notebook during a designated worry time, addressing concerns systematically rather than randomly throughout the day. Before sleep, practice a brief gratitude reflection to counter the brain's negativity bias. What is something good that happened today? It may be small in your eyes or something that we usually take for granted, but acknowledging this is very important. Think hard if you have to, and you'll find multiple things that were good. Remember that transformation isn't linear. There will be days when you forget these practices entirely, when emotions overwhelm you despite your best intentions, when thoughts spiral beyond your ability to contain them. This isn't failure. It's part of the process. The goal isn't perfection, but progress. Gradually developing a new relationship with your emotions, your attention, and your thoughts. With consistent practice, what begins as conscious effort slowly becomes your natural way of being. The sensitivity that once felt like your greatest vulnerability becomes your greatest strength, allowing you to experience life's richness without being consumed by it. This journey begins now, with your next breath, your next emotion, your next thought, and the awareness with which you meet it. The most ridiculously effective way that can beat overthinking, anxiety, and self-sabotage. Beyond the practices we've explored, there's another powerful approach to addressing overthinking and anxiety. One that seems so counterintuitive, it might make you skeptical at first. This technique works alongside the other methods, but tackles the problem from an entirely different angle. What you resist persists, wrote Carl Jung, highlighting a fundamental truth about the human mind. When we try to force unwanted thoughts away, we inadvertently strengthen them. Each attempt to suppress a thought becomes another reminder of exactly what you're trying to forget. This creates a double bind. First, you spiral about the original thought, then you spiral about trying not to think about it. This additional tool may sound strange at first. Say thank you to your anxiety. Yes, it might sound ridiculous initially, thanking the very thing that causes your distress, but this seemingly small shift holds tremendous potential. When anxiety strikes, simply smile and say, "Thank you for this feeling. I appreciate this shift in energy. I love you." For example, imagine that familiar moment when you replay a casual conversation from earlier in the day, fixating on something minor you said. Did I come across as rude? Why did I phrase it that way? They must think I'm so awkward. Or when you post something on social media and think you've made a mistake. Whatever it is, instead of fighting these thoughts or trying to rationalize them away, you might say, "Thank you, anxiety, for showing up again. I've missed you." And do your best to feel the emotions, say the words out loud, or act out the expressions of being genuinely grateful. Thanking the feeling creates an immediate shift in your relationship to it and loosening its grip without fighting it directly. This approach might seem too simple to work, but the science supports it. Research from UC Berkeley found that gratitude practices actively counteract negative emotions by triggering positive neural circuitry, effectively short-circuiting anxiety-producing thought patterns. Gratitude practices work by activating different neural networks than those involved in stress and anxiety. Many people initially react with skepticism. How could thanking my anxiety possibly help when I've tried everything else? This skepticism is natural. Our logical minds want to solve problems through analysis. But therein lies the paradox. Your analytical mind, the very thing that created the spiral, cannot solve the problem it generated. This technique works precisely because it sidesteps analysis altogether. The effectiveness comes from combining verbal expression with physical and emotional alignment. As you express gratitude, allow yourself to smile. Even smirk if that feels more natural. This multi-sensory approach engages your entire system, creating a powerful intervention. Have you noticed that anxiety eventually dissipates not because you solved anything, but because you simply got distracted? Most of the time, the problem wasn't even real. It was a mental creation that dissolved when your attention shifted. So why not thank these feelings? This approach can work in harmony with the other techniques you've learned. Use the witness practice to create initial awareness, the thought containment method for persistent worries, and try this gratitude approach as an in-the-moment intervention when you feel yourself spiraling. Each tool has its place in your emotional regulation toolkit. I've even started saying thank you when something seemingly negative happens. Many times in my life, what initially seemed bad actually worked in my favor. Saying thank you during difficult moments lessens their power over me and strengthens my faith in the unknown. Believing everything is happening for me, not to me. It creates space and, paradoxically, gives me more control. Of course, there are genuinely difficult life events that we may not immediately feel thankful for. But starting with smaller daily frustrations is powerful. This isn't about forced positivity. It's about using your intelligence to connect with your inner power. This approach embodies a profound paradox. By embracing what troubles us, we diminish its power. It's counterintuitive, which is precisely why it works when logical methods fail. Now that you have powerful tools for transforming your relationship with anxiety from within, it's time to address your relationship with the external world. While the thank you practice helps you change internal responses, many of us still find ourselves at the mercy of external circumstances. The next section explores how we inadvertently give our power away to situations beyond our control and how to reclaim that power without trying to control the uncontrollable.